All right, hey traders, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to be covering the indicator annotation function. Now, annotation function could be also thought of as like a directive function. It's a special function that tells PineScript important information about the general nature of your script. So this comment here, our @version equals 5, is what's called a compiler directive. So this is directing the compiler to version 5 of PineScript. It's telling PineScript, the engine that runs PineScript, to treat the code of this script by the rules of version 5 of PineScript. The indicator annotation function does the exact same thing, except that it tells PineScript to treat the code of this script as an indicator. The reason we need to use this is because there are a couple of different variations of script types. So we have strategy scripts. So if I call this strategy, that changes the rules of this script. If I say library, that changes the rules again. So we only have 3 to work with: indicator, strategy, and library. But each of those have different rules that govern your script. For this lesson, we're going to break down the indicator function, which is probably the script type that you'll be working with the most, especially in the beginning of your PineScript journey. So let's break down the parameters of this function. So by calling this an indicator function, that gives this script access to a different subset of inbuilt functions and commands to work with. So for example, let's try and use a strategy function here. Let's say strategy.close, and we need to pass an ID here. Let's just say close our buy trade. If I save this script, we'll get an error here that says you cannot use strategy functions in indicator scripts. Please replace indicator with strategy. So that's why we need to use these annotation functions. If I change this to strategy, suddenly the script is treated differently by the PineScript compiler. It has different functionality and features. But let's stick with indicator for this lesson, and let's break down what we can do with this indicator function. So if I hover my mouse over indicator and hold down Control or Command on a Mac and click on this function, on the name of this function, we'll get the PineScript language reference manual popping up here, and this will tell us all of the various arguments we have to work with here. It'll give us a description of each one. I'm going to break down the most common ones here that you will most likely use in most of your scripts. So let's get rid of our title for a moment here and hover my mouse over this function name, and we'll get a list of arguments. So the first one we have is title. So this is your long title. So let's say I want to call this my super fancy script. And if I save this and move this down a bit, you can see that my script name has changed there. And if I were to publish this script to the TradingView library, this is what it would be called on the TradingView library. This is its long title. This is its more descriptive title. But you can see that it takes up quite a lot of space on my chart. And if we had a lot of plots here, a lot of numbers plotting out here, having a long indicator title name could be a problem. So let's say we want to abbreviate this to MSFS. To do that, we just add in a comma here. All of our arguments in any function are separated by commas. So to add another argument or parameter to this function, we need to put a comma there, and then I need to pass in short title. And then this is a string as well. So we open up with 2 quotations, and let's say we want to call this MSFS. Now if I save the script, watch our title name here. It's now abbreviated to MSFS, but our official title is still my super fancy script. And if I were to publish this to the TradingView library, that is still what this script would be called. But when it's added to our chart, this is what it will say in the indicator box. So that's how our titles work. Next up, we have overlay. So by default, overlay is set to false. So if I save the script, having it set to false draws into its own box. You can see we're in our own oscillator box here, like the RSI or stochastics, MACD, those sorts of indicators. They are drawn into their own indicator box. They're not drawn directly on the price action like a moving average would, for example. But if you want to draw over price action, say you're working with a moving average script, for example, you want overlay to be set to true. Overlay just means it overlays over your price action. So if we set this to true and save the script, first, nothing will happen because we've already added the script to our chart. So to update this particular parameter, we need to remove our script by clicking on this remove button here and then re-add it to our chart. So now when I click add to chart, overlay will be updated and it will be drawing over price action. So if I zoom in here, you can see that this script is just plotting the closing price. So it's connecting the closing price of all of these candles on my chart directly over price action. So that's what overlay does. Next up, we have format. So let's set overlay back to false and remove the script, save it, add it back to my chart. And let's say we want to plot volume instead of the closing price. So now let's save the script and it will update. Whoops. It will update and now it's plotting the volume of each bar onto my chart. Let me go out to the daily so that we get a higher number here. So notice this number down here is an exact number of the volume printed. It's not that readable. We don't really need to know the exact quantity of shares traded on a stock or in the crypto market, how many of a particular crypto asset was traded. In this case, we're dealing with ticks, price ticks on the Forex market, tick volume. We don't need to know the precise number. So if you are dealing, this is mostly useful for volume. I don't really know of any other use cases where you'd want to do this, but this format parameter, you can see down there above the blue underline, format can be set to format dot, and if I press Control space or Command space on a Mac, you get a list of the various formatting options we have to work with here. I'm not going to go over all of these. You can play around with these in your own time to see what they do. It's not often you will need to change the format of your script anyway, but in today's example, we're dealing with volume right now. So let's click on volume and save the script. Now keep an eye on this number here. It's now changed to a smaller number with a K after it. So if I hover over the last bar on my chart, that says 6.037K. So roughly 6,000 volume on this latest bar. So that's the purpose of the format parameter in the indicator function. Next up, we have precision. This is your decimal precision. So let me get rid of this format for now. And let me get rid of this really quickly and save the script to update it. The precision argument changes your decimal precision of the numbers that draw onto the chart in your script. So by default, the precision is going to be set to the decimal precision of your price. So right now we have 5 decimals here on euro dollar. If we were to go to a different market like Bitcoin, for example, now we have a 2 decimal precision. And you can see after the decimal place here, we have 2 digits. But if we wanted to override that to a higher precision or a lower precision, we can do that using the precision argument in this function. So let me set this to 5 and save the script. Now you can see 5 decimal places after the decimal place on this script. Now, in this particular case, we're just plotting the closing price, so that's not that useful, seeing 5 extra or 3 extra decimal places on this price value. But what if we were plotting other values, other indicator values, where we wanted to see those extra decimal places, but we couldn't see them because of the number of decimals on our price? So for example, what about a relative volume indicator? Let's say we want to compare today's volume or this bar's volume to the average over the past 10 days. And we want to know that number to a 3 decimal precision instead of just 2. That's where this argument comes into handy. You can change the precision, override the precision of your indicator plot values with this argument. We will be using this in future lessons, but for now, we can move on. I'll show you practical examples of this later on in the course. Next up, we have scale. So this is the axis, the scale axis you want to plot your values onto. So by default, your indicator is going to plot onto whatever price axis you have on your chart. So in this case, we have price plotting onto our right axis. But if we wanted this to plot onto our left axis, for example, you can use the scale argument here. So we can set scale to scale dot control space. Let's set it to left. and save the script. And we need to remove the script to update this and add it back to our chart. Now you can see that our values here are being plotted onto the left scale, not the right scale. So again, not often you will need to do this, but there is the option to if you need to. Let's get rid of that for now. Save the script, remove it, add it back to our chart. So whenever you're dealing with a visual update like scale or overlay, you need to remove the script and re-add it back to your chart. So if you make a change to your script and it doesn't update, a general good rule of thumb is to try removing it, add it back on. That will force TradingView to update your script entirely. Now the next parameter we have to work with is max bars back. This is not something you will often use in your scripts. I've never used it in my scripts, to be honest, but it's here if you need to use it. Now this tells the script how many bars back it can reference from whichever current bar it's calculating on. So if we're looking at the final bar on my chart and we set max bars back to 10, for example, and I save the script, whatever code is running on this last script, this last bar on my chart, the script can only reference the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bars. So only this price action here. Now, personally, in my own coding, I've written dozens of scripts over the years. I've never used this feature. I've never used this max bars back. I've never had to. I've never had a reason to. But if you do run into a situation where you need to use this function, this feature, this is how you would do it. You can set your max bars back to 10. Just keep in mind that this is in reference to the current bar. So when your script is running over historical price action, each bar on your chart can look back 10 bars. And then this bar can look back 10 bars, and then this one, etc. So that's how that argument works, but let's get rid of it for now since we would rarely use that. The final parameter I'm going to cover here that is commonly used is time frame. So time frame specifies what time frame your script can run on. So for example, let's drop down to the 4-hour chart and change this to D, short for daily, and save the script. Now my script is plotting the daily time frame closing price onto my chart instead of the 4-hour. So if I zoom in here, you can see that each time this updates, we get a new value down here. So on this bar here, a new day began, and the previous day's closing price was 54690. And then on the bars in between, we get NA because these 4-hour bars are plotting in between the next day. And then on that next day's beginning, we get the previous day's closing price, which was 57487, and so on. So that's one way to hard code your script to only reference a particular time frame. I wouldn't recommend doing this. There are better ways to do this, depending on the script. If you have a script that you only want to reference a particular time frame, you might want to hard code it this way. But if you have a script that you want to be able to use on multiple time frames, you're better off using user inputs to specify the time frame of your script. And we will cover that in future lessons. I don't want to overload you with too much information, so we'll leave this lesson here. If you want to see what these other parameters do, again, just hold Control and click on this function name, and you'll get a list of the arguments we have here with detailed descriptions on how they work. But anyway, that'll do it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.